Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, I'm Hillary Dickman. I'm the Senior Assistant Director of Admission for Marketing and Communications at Colorado College, and I'm also a parent of 2 college students.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of 2 daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a wellness coach at the Keenan Flagler Business School at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Good afternoon, friends. There are so many crazy things going on in the world of college and the world of college admissions that broke this week. But we're going to address those in later weeks. I just have one announcement today. We're only keeping our listeners survey open for 8 more days. So if you want your voice to be heard, go to yourcollegeboundkid.com resources tab, and you'll see our listener survey. You are all so awesome and have been giving us incredible feedback. Now today, I'm going to dive into what I believe is a tremendous learning opportunity for everyone who hears this podcast. Before we get started, I want to share a story that really made my week. I was doing a counseling session with a student from Portland last Sunday night, and I told her about the case studies, and I told her how I wanted her to read the files, and I wanted her to watch the video discussion, and I told her how much I thought she would learn if she goes through this process. And she said to me, "This is incredible. I'm going to tell my college counselor first thing tomorrow morning to tell all of the other students in the junior and senior class about this opportunity." I was impressed that the student wasn't only thinking about herself, but thinking about her classmates. But I was also excited about how much the students were going to learn. If you're a parent, please ask your student to read the 3 admissions files and watch or listen to the committee discussion if they want to understand how colleges make admissions decisions. Now, over the next 5 weeks, you're going to be hearing discussions and debates about 3 students. 1 student will be admitted, 1 student will be waitlisted, and 1 student will be denied. You know, I was talking with one of the panelists who was on the committee, and she said, "I'm so curious whether our listeners are going to admit the same student that we admitted." Special thanks to Hillary Dickman for hosting this, to Kate Strickland of the University of Colorado for being on our panel, for Grace Robertson Lloyd of Grinnell College for being on our panel. They gave up 3 hours of their precious time to help you understand how admissions committees make decisions. Special thanks also to our 5 parents, all podcast listeners, by the way. Our 3 dads, Chris from Ohio, Chris from D.C., Nishant from Texas, Mary from Connecticut, and Fawn from Hawaii. They joined our 3 professionals in reading the files, thinking, deliberating, debating, and discussing which one to admit, which student to waitlist, and which student to deny. I know what you're thinking. Did I just hear a screeching noise? That's right, and it wasn't an accident. That was a pump the brakes noise. I recommend you stop listening now, pump the brakes, and go read Alana Anderson's file. And then come back. And this is how you will really maximize your learning of this experience we're taking you through. Now, I know that's a first. When was the last time a podcaster ever told you to stop listening to their podcast? That isn't how you grow your audience. Now, if you just listen attentively without reading the files, I still feel this is going to be a valuable experience. I'll put it about a 6 out of 10 on the learning curve for you. But if you read the files and listen, it's probably going to be about a 9 out of 10. And if you read the files and actually go and watch the video, I'd say it's going to be a 10 out of 10 in terms of a learning experience. Now, you read the files by going to yourcollegeboundkid.com, click the resources tab. You'll see YCBK admissions case study. Just click the link. It'll take you to a Google Drive, and you'll read the context, the background, and you'll read Alana Anderson's file. Alana's a student will be deliberated and debated today. She's the first one up, and you'll hear her discussion in a few minutes. Now, if you're more of a visual learner, the full 2.5-hour video discussion's up on the website. You'll see the Common App up on the screen. You'll meet our committee members, and you'll pick up kind of body language as well when you hear the discussion. So just go to yourcollegemountkid.com, resources tab, and just above the case studies link, you'll see the full video committee discussion. If you're more of an audible learner, just keep listening, and you'll hear all 2.5 hours over the next few Mondays. The discussion today is longer by about 20 minutes because they go into a lot more background just to help you understand context. Without any further ado, listen very carefully to see what is emphasized and what is not emphasized. I turn you over to our admissions committee discussion about the first student up for review, Alana Anderson, who attends a charter school in New York.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. I'm so glad to have you here for the YCBK case studies. This is going to be really exciting. It's the first time we've ever done something like this on the podcast. So we're going to go ahead and do introductions, and then we'll get started. My name is Hillary Dickman. I'm a regular co-host on the podcast, and I am a senior assistant director for marketing and communications in the admission office at Colorado College. I'm also a parent of a Colorado College sophomore, and then I have one student who just graduated from Wellesley College. I'll pass it on to Kate.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here with you today. My name is Kate Strickland. I'm Senior Assistant Director of Application Review at the University of Colorado Boulder, where I've been for about 4 years. And I recently became the mother of a high schooler. We are in week 2 of our freshman year and are excited for what her career may bring.
Amazing.
Grace.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Grace Robertson Lloyd. I use she, her pronouns. I work for Grinnell College, a small private liberal arts and sciences college based in Grinnell, Iowa, not too far from Colorado. And I am, in fact, based in Denver, Colorado. And so it's always great to be able to do this sort of event and be able to talk to those that are based in Colorado, but also with the awareness that I work with international students. I do all virtual recruitment, infos, tours, etc. That brings students from around the world virtually to Grinnell. And as a selective institution, it's always, I think, really helpful to be able to be a part of these case studies and shed some light on the challenges and the intricacies of the review process, because it is something everybody wonders about. I also, just full disclosure, I'm from New Jersey, went to Grinnell in Iowa, so I'm an alum, now live in Colorado, so I've been all over, happy to answer any questions. And this is, starting tomorrow, my 10th year working in the admission office at Grinnell College. So happy to help and answer any questions as appropriate. Thank you.
Thanks, Grace. All right, parents, we're excited to hear from you. Who wants to go first?
I can jump in. My name is Chris. I'm in Ohio. I have now, I was going to say rising senior, but I guess she is a senior now, which feels so weird because she was born just yesterday. But
yes,
I'm basically in the midst of this journey. Started, really looking at colleges a little while ago, trying to get a bit of a head start and making visits when we could during family trips and whatnot. But now we're at the point where things have really started to kick in and starting to have a look at actual applications and all of that. So this will be exciting.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris. Who's next?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Chris Leonardo. I live in Washington, D.C. I have a senior and a 14-year-old. My senior is in the midst of college process. He started in earnest over the summer with respect to getting his essays prepared and whatnot, but he's really grinding now as the school year is starting. And I have a 14-year-old who's in the middle of a similar process for boarding school admissions, which is very similar to college admissions as I'm experiencing in real time. And very happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm Mary. I have 2 kids, one who has graduated college, went to Clarkson and UConn for her master's, And then I have a son who was on the podcast before. He was the one talking about cybersecurity and RIT. He is now entering his senior year at RIT. And I'm helping one of my nieces with the college admission process. She is a senior in high school.
That's awesome. I love that you're still engaged with this process, even though your own kids have moved through it.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nishant. I'm based out of Texas. I have a daughter who is now a rising sophomore at University of Texas, Austin. And I also have a rising sophomore in high school. So he's going to be getting ready in a couple of years. On the volunteering side, I volunteer for Scholar Match, as well as with College Matchlighters. And I serve as a college coach for a lot of the students who come through those two programs.
Amazing. Thank you for giving back that way. That's awesome. And one more, fun.
Hi, I'm Fawn. I have a rising junior in college. She goes to Harvey Mudd College, and I have a current senior in high school. And I cannot believe how different the process has become just in 3 years. It's actually astounding to me. So I have been listening to the podcast religiously, and I just really appreciate all of the information you have provided us with. It's just been unbelievable. So I'm just so happy to help in any way by being part of today's.
Amazing. Thank you so much for those kind words, Fawn. I really appreciate it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can pull up the Cascadia materials. So folks who are listening, hopefully you have already looked at these materials. I think your best bet for listening to this episode or watching the recording is going to be if you've already read through these, so that they're not all brand new to you, because it's a lot to get through, a lot to digest. Let's see. Maybe one of the other college reps, maybe Grace, do you want to sort of introduce how we run a case study and just kind of talk through an introduction?
Yeah, happy to. So when it comes to the case study program, a lot of what we're going to be going through is details of files, fake files. Please know these are fake files that we are going to be discussing and trying to get a better sense of how different, and in the case of this, Cascadia is the school that the fictional university that we are representing, but how different institutions review files. So through this process, we will have a candidate rating form that you are welcome to use to keep track of the different facts and information and pieces that you might want to be aware of as we go through each of our 3 files, Alana, Alan, and Layla. And then also the important thing to remember is that we are representing an institution that has priorities. So the Cascadia College profile is something that we will go over as well. It's really important to be aware of what our institution, this fictional institution, cares about when reviewing applicants. So through the lens of the school of Cascadia, we will then review these applicant files, and then we will have a vote. And my understanding is that this vote will be happening where people can vote in after the fact, right, or during the actual podcast. But the idea is for you to come up with your own opinions and ideas of who you would admit, waitlist, deny, etc., because this is such a challenging process. It's a process that is subjective, and that's what we want you to understand. This is not a cut and dry process of looking at a student and saying yes or no or maybe. This is a much more thoughtful process and human process. We are human beings reviewing these different students who are applying and interested in applying to our institution. So through this case study, that's what we hope you understand by the end of it. And it'll be a fun process to get to that end part together.
Yeah, for sure. Do we think that should we start with the questions to consider, or does it make more sense actually to start with the Cascadia profile? What do you guys think? Kate or Grace, any
I think starting with
opinions?
The Cascadia profile would be a good place to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kate, do you want to walk through that?
Sure. Do you want me to hit highlights or or
Sure.
read it?
Yeah.
Okay,
No, everybody should have read it already. So let's just hit what you think we need to highlight.
great. So Cascadia, where we are all now current employees in the enrollment management office, is a suburban liberal arts college right outside of Portland, Oregon. Um, it's important to know that it's not extremely large. It's only 4,200 students total. They want to, we emphasize academic rigor, but also quite a nice work-life balance between our students who are very intellectually curious, but also very engaged outside of the classroom in the many activities we have to offer. I thought it was important to note that the core curriculum at Cascadia, so a full third of your degree is dedicated to kind of an interdisciplinary approach, so where you have to select from distribution requirements across the arts and sciences. And then a third is for your major and a third is for electives. But Cascadia is certainly a place where we're looking for students who are comfortable and interested in a wide range across many disciplines, especially in arts and sciences. We are a selective institution with a 20% admit rate. We are looking for students who already have a very strong academic record as demonstrated in high school. So we're looking for either very demanding or the most demanding curriculum was undertaken during their high school journeys. Looking for more A's than B's, typically in our student body, upward grade trends. If a student is coming from a school that offers a class rank, they typically are in the top 10% of their high school class. Cascadia is test optional, but we do have middle 50% ranges of 1250 to 1450 in the SAT or 29 to 34 in the ACT range. We see, again, quite a mix of popular majors from the hard sciences, biochemistry and mathematics, all the way through to creative writing, international studies, and English literature. Something that I think it's really important to keep in mind is Cascadia has just established a new program for interdisciplinary sciences. And this is where students can dive into research that crosses both sciences all the way into the humanities. So again, we're looking for those students with wide-ranging academic passions. We have, a very diverse student body, and geographically, we have students from all over the country, and indeed 1 in 10 of our students that joins us here outside of Portland is an international student. The last thing I wanted to highlight is, I think often we think of institutional priorities coming in the form of an admissions committee is deciding yes, no, based on the kind of students who they want to populate their class with. But it's important to know that institutional priorities can show up other places in enrollment management, and here I think is a good example. So we learn in the profile that Cascadia meets the full demonstrated financial need with no loans for students from family incomes below $75,000 per year, or students who will be the first in their family to attend college, i.e. first-generation students. So here we see that Cascadia is very dedicated to bringing in a robust first-generation crowd and those students, giving those students a chance to attend Cascadia who may be coming from lower income households.
Yeah. And it doesn't say this in the profile, but I already had one question before we started about whether Cascadia is need blind or need aware. So what that means is, does Cascadia consider a student's ability to pay when they're deciding whether to admit the student? And we're going to go with that Cascadia is need blind because we don't have any information about these students' financial backgrounds or their ability to pay. And so we're going to just move forward not considering that. That's a really complicated thing that would probably go beyond the scope of what we can do today anyway. So we're not going to consider their ability to pay when we're looking at these students. I'm going to go back up to the page when we're where you can see the description of what we might consider when we're reading an admission application. And so Kate just talked about the institutional priorities, and I think that was pretty clear through what Kate was talking about, that we're looking for students who are kind of from all over the country, all over the world. Testing is not a big deal to us. We're test optional. We are looking for students who can really fill out this community, right? This is a liberal arts community where we're looking for students with lots of different interests. One thing that was highlighted in the profile is that interdisciplinary program. So that might be something that comes up as like the student would be really great for that program. And then in the academic record, we're looking at their academic trend and their grades. So are their grades typically going up and getting stronger as their coursework gets more rigorous, or is it going down, or is it a roller coaster kind of all over the place? How do you see intellectual strengths or intellectual interests showing up in the academic record? Does it seem like the student is ready for the kind of work that they would have to do at Cascadia? And how do we see that showing up in their transcript? And then in their extracurricular record, what's the most meaningful extracurricular commitment or commitments that they're engaged in? What seems to be taking up the most of their time? What are they most excited about? How accomplished are these students compared to other students who engage in similar activities? And then, has the student been really impactful? It's so interesting. Lots of times students will start their own nonprofit or something, but then they sort of leave it behind when they go away to college. And so that impact is sort of falling away, right? So has this student either started something that's continuing, or have they joined an organization where they can leave kind of a legacy behind and where that impact can continue after they leave? Leadership isn't a requirement, but do we see leadership in there? If we should take note of it. Do they have some kind of skill or talent that's going to stand out? And then obviously their personal qualities. So has the student faced special circumstances that we need to consider? Do they show resilience or initiative? Do they collaborate well? Like, is this the kind of student who you would want to be in class with your own kiddos, or who you would want maybe to be a roommate with your own kiddos? Are they kind? Are they respectful? Are they good citizens? What's their character like? So generally, would we want the student to be on our campus? So we've got this applicant rating form that you're welcome to print out and use if that's helpful for you. And it sort of lists these things that I just talked about, so that you can remember to kind of take note of them as we go through these applications. So when I was sort of building this document, I wanted to make sure that on the first page you could see something like what we see when we're actually reading in Slate. So when I get the first page of an application, it's what we call a dashboard. And it tells me some of the demographic information of the student, a little bit about the high school, like this part about Alana, who's our first student that we're going to review, that she goes to Nova Leadership Academy, which sends 86% of its students to four-year college. So right off the bat, I'm getting that information about Alana's high school. And then I also get on my dashboard some information about how she's engaged with us, if she has engaged with us. So has she shown up at a virtual session? Has she shown up at an open house event? If she's registered and attended some events that we have put on, then those are going to be on the first page also. It just helps me to sort of get the context of like, how engaged is she? Who is this student at like a 10,000 foot view? And then we dive into the rest of the application. So let's go, guys. Grace, do you want to take the Nova profile and tell us what we need to know about Nova?
Yeah. So one thing that's always, like Hillary talked about, important to know is a little context of the high school that a student is coming from, because there are so many different types of institutions across the United States and the world. And all of these institutions have different options for the courses, how they define rigor, and more. So as we can see from here, Nova Leadership Academy is based in East Harlem. It's a small public charter high school. It's a pretty diverse institution in terms of the ethnicity and the contextual statistics. So there are 76% of students on free or reduced price lunch. 86% of the students are first gen, and it's about, 18% white American students. And so that is, if anyone is good at math, that's 82% non-white American students attending this institution, or multicultural students, etc. So this is a very diverse institution. They offer 2 advanced AP, so advanced placement courses, and 3 honors courses. So that is how they count their rigor. And so while they might have some fewer AP options than other institutions, when we're looking at a student, we only review them in the context of the school profile and what is available to them. We never want to hold against a student something that they can't take because it's not available at their high school. And so for Nova, and for Alana, who goes here, we're looking at, okay, is this student going to be challenging themselves based on the rigor that is available to her at her high school? We can then see the average GPA, the average SAT scores, and we can see also the graduation rate and matriculations for 4-year colleges. So it is pretty successful at getting students into 4-year colleges, which is wonderful. So like we saw, it's about 86% into 4-year colleges, and has a 100% graduation rate compared to the New York City graduation rate of only 80%. So this is a pretty strong institution at getting students into that next step. And so when reviewing our student within this context, we want to keep in mind the rigor that's available and the fact that this is a school that really does support students from all backgrounds, as we'll learn from Alana and her background, and has a very high success rate at getting students into that next step program, a college or university, a 4-year college or university in particular.
Awesome, Grace. Thank you so much. Oh, I didn't even know there was more down here. So yeah, there's the graduation rates and college matriculation bar graphs down there. Those are super helpful. Okay, parents, I know you've already read through this application. Does one of you, did anything stand out to you about this counselor evaluation? Does one of you want to kind of point out what you saw? Chris, I just saw you unmute.
Oh, I guess I'm on the hook now.
You're on the hook now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in a relative sense, it was a little more simple description compared to a couple of the latter ones, but it also struck me as a little heartfelt and personable in that way. So I thought that part was kind of interesting, whereas a couple of the others, or maybe the one from the private institution, struck me as almost a little more formal. Like they more clearly understood what they were trying to get across, from a to try to promote, the particular student. But yeah, that was kind of my initial reaction when I thought about it relative to the other ones.
If you were armed with a highlighter, as we are when we're reading in Slate, are there any like sentences or words that you would highlight in this counselor letter because it stood out to you?
I think what an obvious one, I think is the, within the top 25% of our class, like that part kind of stuck out to me. I already knew this from the other aspect, but first gen and knowing that's a priority, that, stands out to me. I think one, and I'm thinking back to, I had read the rest of the materials as well, but some of the things that flagged or stuck out to me in this, in relation to that was that third paragraph, being multifaceted, deep thinker, highly curious. That's something that really stood out to me in the rest of the materials that I saw, and that stood out in the application as well. Yeah, it's always fun when you see something like that and then you read through the rest of the application and you find that it's confirmed. So we'll see if that happens for us with Alana, but it's nice when those things kind of help build a good picture of the student for you. All right.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Is this the way you all usually read an application? This is the order?
It depends. Yes, this is the order. Well, at least, I don't know. Grace and Kate, tell me if it's different for you guys. For us, this is the order that we read at CC, but I'd love to hear how it's different for you guys.
I usually get all of the letters of recommendation at the end. So I usually go dashboard, transcript, the Common App, essays, letters of rec.
Okay.
But that's just me.
Yeah, and our letters are usually at the end as well.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I've never. It's interesting. Every school does it differently, right?
Yeah.
But we usually read the dashboard, then the Common App, the essays, then the transcript, then the profile, then the letters of recommendation.
Okay. Our counselor evaluation is in with the school report. So in the school report will include, there's like a piece of the Common App where the counselor can tell you a little bit about the school, and the counselor can tell you about the student, like kind of how they fall within the school. And then we see the counselor evaluation and the profile and the transcript, and those are all in one tab together. And then we move on to kind of the rest of the application. So that's a great question, because I'm sure every school thinks about it a little bit differently in how they review. Any other questions before we keep going?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So who wants to kind of summarize for us what they see in this transcript?
I can go.
Awesome.
So I think overall, a very strong transcript for the courses that were offered in her school. So she took both of the highest AP classes, the only two that were offered, along with the English honors classes as well. So she took almost the highest level of the high level classes that they had. Overall, her grades have been really good, maybe a little bit of an upward trend, but just really steady, mostly A grades as she went through each of those. And she took all 5 core classes across all of the years. So
Oh yeah. So you're seeing that really good like diversity among the topics that she's studying, in
which her
addition to
and our counselor also
yeah.
mentioned that within her letter too, that she seemed to really like going across all of the different types of subjects.
Yeah. So for a school like Cascadia, that's really great. And then she's in that window of kind of more A's than B's, which is what we're looking for, and the most demanding curriculum that's available at her high school. Does it seem like, I don't know, I would love to hear from Grace and Kate. Do you guys, when there's a GPA presented on the transcript, do your eyes skim over that? Do they lock on it? Do you care? Does it matter? Or are you thinking more in terms of like what you're seeing on the transcript rather than the GPA?
So I know this is different institution to institution. There are some institutions that will actually recalculate the GPA based off of their own preferences. So, some colleges and universities won't weight AP or honors courses, and some will weight them differently than what the high school weights them or does not weight them as. For my institution, I just glance over that GPA because for us, it's more important to see the grades themselves and the classes that they are in rather than the GPA, because it can be so subjective based on how the school defines rigor, how the school weights or unweights, how much weight they give when they do weight a certain course. And also, we are a very international campus, and so we have so many students applying from across the world that use these different schools will use very different grading scales. And so to try to keep it fair, we really focus on the grades themselves and the classes that they are in rather than highlighting or just looking at the GPA.
Yeah, same for me. How about you, Kate?
Yeah. I think it is interesting that, so many students hold their GPA so near and dear to their hearts, but in reality, it might be broken down and completely changed institution to institution as they're looking at it. But in terms of how I review, neither the GPA nor the grades are mutually exclusive or in a vacuum to me. They really go hand in hand. Sometimes I'll take a peek at the weighted versus the unweighted to just get a sense of how much challenge the student. I mean, that can also just be a factor of how much weighting that school does, but it can be useful. But yeah, you can never just go off GPA, nor can, in my opinion, you go off solely grades. They work together.
Yeah, for sure. Nishant, what was your question?
So I guess in this kind of a situation, right, where the raw scores are not provided, like how do you all kind of make that determination, like whether A means like it's 90 or does it go?
That's a great question. We get transcripts that are on 100-point scale, so I'll see numbers instead of grades, and then I also have ones that are grades. And gosh, it's hard to explain. So I'm going to count all the A's on this application if I were reading this for CC, and I'm just going to assume that an A, whether it's at a school that gives out minuses and pluses, or if it's a school that only gives out solid letter grades, that an A is an A, right? And so I'm going to count the number of A's. If the student has straight A's, then that's going to get them like sort of the highest bump on their academic rating. If they have a couple of A minuses, it'll bump them down a little bit. So what really comes into play is when schools have transcripts that have only numbers. And at some schools, like a 90% is considered a B. It's not considered an A. And so then I have to like recalculate in my brain how many A's and B's the student has so that I can enter the right like grade for that percentage number or that score for them. There are a lot of schools that I work with in Maine where you can go all the way up to a 92% and that's still considered a B. You don't get an A until you get to a 93. How about you guys, Kate and Grace? Do you have anything else to say about how you would look at that?
Yeah, a lot of it is trust in how the school is reporting their grades. And like Hillary said, there's all different grading scales. So I will say that we will also sometimes see a school that says, actually, an A minus is an 86 to a 92. If that's what the school reports, then we will follow that grading scale because we trust that there's a reason that they're saying that. But otherwise, unless we get that specific context from the high school, we're going to review it in more of the traditional, an A is a 90 to 100, a B is an 80 to 89, that sort of thing. But it is, again, very much the importance of the school profile becomes much more critical when we are reviewing schools, especially ones that we aren't as familiar with that might have different grading scales, because that grading scale that they provide on the school profile can really help us better understand the transcript. Because otherwise we are going off of what we are most familiar with and what is the general accepted grading scale across this country, especially.
Yeah, I would like to make a pitch to any school counselors who are listening to make sure that's clear on your school profile. Like Summit County is a really tough one for me. I had to actually like find a counselor at the school and say, what does a 3.5 mean? I don't know if a 3.5 is a B or a B plus or a B minus or something else because it's not on the school profile. And you don't want your admission readers to have to go chasing down that information because not everyone will. So you want to make it really obvious. And parents, if you look at your kiddo's school profile and it's not clear to you and they have a strange grading system, it's not clear to you how that translates, that's I think a worthwhile conversation to have. Just ask how are you sort of providing this information to counselors so that they can understand how to translate this grading scale. Kate, I saw you unmute.
Just quickly, this can also be a big factor at the lower end of the grades. Some high schools will say 70 and below is failing versus, typically 60. And so, we know to look out for those instances. And again, just like Hillary was saying, factor that into our assessment of what we feel the grades are.
Can I ask a question? Yeah. So some schools do a year grade and others do a semester. So do you guys ever average the grades from semester to year grade? Because as a parent, I'm thinking some kids may be disadvantaged by having the semester 1 and semester 2 grade, because if they got an A and a B plus, potentially their year grade would turn out to be an A. And so then they would have less B's counted against them. Does that ever factor into your?
Yeah, we read whatever's on the transcript. And so, yeah, we get students who, I was reading today, a student who is on a trimester system. We get quarter grades from some schools. So at least in our office, we try to be as fair as we can. So if a student had, a C plus and then during one quarter and B's during all their other quarters in their math class and their final grade was a B, then B is what I'm going to enter as I'm recalculating their GPA. But that doesn't mean I still see that it's there. But in the end, as we're leaning on sort of the academic rating that we're giving them, that the C isn't going to show up in there. How about you guys, Kate and Grace?
Yeah, it's whatever is given to us on the transcript. And you're right, it can be challenging, but I would say vice versa. There are some students that maybe get a C plus and a B minus, and it averages to a C plus year average. And so they get a C plus on their transcript and we don't see that B minus. So it can be in both ways a potential disadvantage or an advantage to a student, but it's whatever the school provides. And it is challenging because schools do not have a blanket system of providing that information to us. So we're just going off of what is given to us because that's all we have.
All right, we'll keep going.
Thank you.
So yeah, for sure. So
I
Alana
think
has
one more question, if
yeah.
actually I could, and on the same
Go
point,
for it,
and
Chris.
it's maybe just another nuance of it, but the record that we're looking at has A minus, A plus scoring system, but like the school that we'll get to later just has A, B, C, D. And you mentioned like in a rubric, you might have, well, someone had A's and then someone else had A minuses, they might adjust the score. How does that handled when a school doesn't have that and it's just the blanket A, B, C, D? And how is that thought in the academic?
Then that student who got a 90% and earned an A in that class is really lucky, right? I mean, that can advantage students who are just barely making the highest grades if their school doesn't record minuses and pluses. But then on the same hand, like it's kind of like what Kate was saying earlier, if a school is offering minus and pluses and the student is getting consistently B pluses instead of Bs, that's also an advantage, right? So it probably all comes out in the wash. When you think about the size of the pool, it's a lot harder when you're thinking about your own individual student and the kinds of grades that are showing up on their transcript. Does that answer that question, Chris?
It does. Yeah, it was just that there's more nuance and granularity.
I know. Yeah. And when you get those students who have like the percentage grades and they're getting, straight 90s versus the kid who's getting straight 99s, then that's when you're really like, wow, like if this school were just giving A's for all of those, you can really see the difference. But okay, so now we dig into the Common App. So on the first page of the Common App, we see the personal information for Alana. So we can see her address, where she lives. We can see that there is Spanish spoken at home. That's her first language. We see that she was born in the Dominican Republic, but that she's a US citizen. And then we move down, we see a little bit about her parents, which helps us get some understanding of what her context is like, right? So her parents are from the Dominican Republic and Barbados, and neither one of them has a college degree. Her dad didn't graduate from high school. So this is like, wow, like this student is really performing well, considering that she's coming from a context where her parents have not had the opportunity to have a lot of education. And then we can see there are a lot of kids in her household, right? She's got one older brother who has done some trade school or community college, and then 3 younger siblings who are in grade school still. So that really helps round out the picture of what we were seeing in her school profile, gives us an idea of kind of what sort of neighborhood she lives in, what her family's like, what her school is like, so that we can see what her experience has been like growing up. And then this part of the Common App where we get to what school she's going to and what she's currently taking, this is really helpful. We need to see what students are taking their senior year. Usually it's on the transcript, but not always. They don't always show us what the student's senior year courses are. And so being able to see that here and see that this student still has her foot on the gas, as my dean of admission would say. She's still taking really tough classes, which is great. That's what we're looking for from students. We don't want them to kind of just chill out their senior year, right? So that's a helpful thing to see there. Any questions as we keep moving?
Can I ask a question? This is very nuanced, but since Spanish was her very first language and she's taking AP Spanish as her language, does that come into play at all in your assessment?
That's such an interesting question, and it's a question we get a lot from parents in case studies. So Grace, do you want to talk about how you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think of it in the same way as an English speaker takes an AP English class. I think it's really, really impressive. And there's no real difference between it being your native language or not, because you're going to the extra mile of an advanced placement course in a language. So whether or not it's your first language, second language, or a third or fourth language, it's a really impressive thing just to be challenging yourself in that way because it is different than just, speaking the language at home. It's very different when you dive into the intricacies of any language. So that's how I would review it. I'm not sure if Kate or Hillary have a different opinion, but that's how I view it.
Yeah.
Well, and I would note too, sorry, that the only language that was offered other than English at her school was Spanish.
Yes.
Oh, good catch, Mary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
She had no choice.
Yeah, I I totally agree with everything Grace said. I think if Alana was at a really well-resourced school where there was a multitude of languages that she could have started in ninth grade, um, maybe ideally she would have branched out and taken a new language. But exactly to your point, this was, this is all about school context. This is what was available, and Alana saw it through and took her Spanish to the highest level possible. So I think it's impressive.
Mm-hmm. And I think along the lines of what Grace was saying, I often see students who are native Spanish speakers and or heritage speakers and are not doing that great in their Spanish classes. I think because you just like when you're taking English grammar as a, English speaker, you don't always figure out how to diagram sentences and reading Shakespeare isn't always easy. And it's the same thing when you're reading Spanish literature or trying to, get the subjunctive right in Spanish and moving from kind of colloquial Spanish into the academy Spanish, as my Spanish teacher would have said in high school. So yeah, I think there's still a challenge there, and we do see quite a few heritage speakers who are taking their language in high school, and we see a lot who branch out too.
Thank you for that. It was a personal question because we speak Olelo Hawaii at home and my son is taking it. And what's great is he says to me, "You're doing it all wrong, Mom. You
Yes.
are you need to take the class."
Yeah. Well, and for a language like that we're trying to protect, right? That's disappearing. That's super impressive. We want to see students diving into that so that we can keep those languages around. So that's great. I'm really glad that he's taking it. All right. And then we see AP testing. I tend to just like scroll right through this section. But it is impressive that the student got a 5 on their Spanish language AP, and I think a 3 on the English lang AP is fine. That's a hard test. We don't at CC enter those numbers into any kind of like calculator to add to the academic rating or anything. I know that there are schools that do. Kate or Grace, is there any nuance that you want to offer about looking at subject tests or sorry, AP tests?
So yeah, we don't look at them at all, actually. And if they're included somewhere in a transcript, we would ignore them. I think it's kind of intriguing here that Nova only offers honors level courses, but yet Alana decided to take the AP in English Lang and got a very solid score. So I thought that was surprising to me and a nice thing to see.
Yeah, and that's known for being a really hard AP exam. So it's impressive to do it without being prepped by your school.
Friends, you should know that Colorado College and the University of Colorado may not look at APs, but places like Stanford, Yale, Emory, Duke, and especially Cornell, and many others, AP scores matter, and they are factored into how they read an admissions file. Just know there's many different ways to read a file.
All right, so now we get to the activities section. Parents, what did you notice here? What did you have questions about?
I'll go. She has a lot of family responsibilities. So her parents both work. She has to go and pick the kids up. Her siblings up at school sometimes. And yet she was still able to do things after school, like be on the volleyball team, start a club based on interest from what she had in school. I think overall, a lot of go-getter within her, having jobs too in the summer during the breaks. So a lot of balancing, it seems like, that she has to do.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else that anyone noticed?
And she contributes to financially to the family. That was really impressive to me.
Yeah. So she was working at Shop and Go, and now she's working at Sunrise Daycare. During the summer, she's working a full 40 hours a week. Well, I assume that's during the summer. It says, break and 15 weeks a year, maybe some over winter break also, working at the nursery.
And I'll add, she got promoted too at work from
to
the advanced crew. So showing some leadership as she goes through there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. So I noticed, because this is a question that I get a lot, that I'm using air quotes for anyone who's just listening, not looking, only has enough activities on this list to fill up one page, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things listed. These things that she's doing are all really time-consuming things. I would not expect her to be filling up a full page. I also wouldn't expect her to be doing short-term things like going to some leadership conference in Washington, D.C., or some like pre-college program or something. Like, she has a lot of responsibilities at home. And so the things that she is doing, the ways that she's engaging, are, to me, quite impressive. And I don't need 2 pages full of activities to know that she is busy and engaged, and showing some leadership abilities with co-founding the ceramics club, and at work, being the libero on her volleyball team. So these are all things that I look at and I think, wow, she's really putting in a lot of hard work outside of school.
Something that struck me,
the
word responsible was really just that. And it was one of the notes that I had, was there was a responsibility that came through to me because of not only just caring for family, but even the daycare. You're responsible for children and taking care of them. Like, there was an element that there's a level of responsibility and maturity that's required to be able to do that. And I thought that was notable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she seems like the kind of student who you'd be able to count on. We would love to have students like this working in our office, right? Who, when they sign up for a shift, they, not that our students don't show up, but once in a while, right? You get a student who's like, oh, I overslept, or I forgot, or whatever. And it's just nice when students like this really know how to take responsibility. Okay. And then her essay. So we're not going to read through this essay, but I would love to hear what you guys noticed about it. One of the things that I do when I'm reading an essay is I try to think of like maybe 3 characteristics that I learned about the student from reading the essay. And then I also think about like their actual writing ability as I'm reading. So what stands out to you guys about this essay?
I love this essay.
Did you?
Very good.
Sorry. Yeah, I really love this essay. It almost came across, especially in the early parts, as if I'm reading it from another parent. Like, as parents, we've all been there, like, you need a break.
Yeah.
And, right out of the gate, she's almost like reflecting how important it is for her to take care of her family, how it's important to her as a person, but also just how it's a big responsibility for her. The second was, it wasn't a woe is me essay. Like, she's saying, yeah, like, I take a lot of pride in taking care of him. Yes, I'm exhausted, but it wasn't a woe is me about it. It was sort of just integrated as to who she is as a person. And that was great. There were some typos in it and stuff, but like, that's not material to me as a reader. I thought it was incredibly well crafted. I thought
That's
it was
awesome.
a well crafted story. And then when you put it in context with her extracurriculars and some of the other things that we've already gone over so far, it almost like helps put it all together in a way that's coherent and cohesive. So I really, really liked it. And it also complemented the supplemental essay, which I know we'll get to in a second. It really works well to tell the reader who she is. So I really responded to this a lot.
Yeah, when you say that it wasn't a woe is me story, I agree with you. And I would say that the macrons are there to bear the weight of the challenges that she's encountered, right? Like, she uses those as the vehicle to tell her story without sounding like woe is me, but to be able to show like the challenges that she's encountered while having sort of a positive spin on it. Nishant, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things that I know you all kind of talk about in the podcast is how do you, when you're writing a personal statement, how do you become a three-dimensional kind of a person, right? So this essay really kind of, hit those notes of you can relate to the person, you can relate to her story, you can relate to her as a three-dimensional person. It's not just a one-dimensional character application, so to speak.
Yeah, I want to go sit down and have coffee with her or have macarons with her after I read this, right? Like I want to get to know her better, and you want your reader to be feeling that way. Kate or Grace, did either of you see anything in here that you wanted to comment on?
I might push back a little bit on this essay.
Okay. I love it.
I did think it was a beautifully written, very authentic voice. I thought there were some interesting like whispers of being ready to spread her wings. But I did feel like her conclusion that she tried to do something way outside of her comfort zone. It didn't work the first time, so her decision is now to kind of retreat and take smaller steps. Literally, don't bite off more than you can chew. I'm not totally sold on that as a conclusion that I want to see. I mean, she does say I'm going to, keep pushing slightly, ever so slightly. But part of me is sad that she's not going to take those huge leaps of faith for now.
Yeah, because the first week of orientation sort of is biting off more than you can chew, whether you want it to be or not, right?
And possibly moving from New York City to Oregon to attend our university. That's a big change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I looked at that a little bit differently. I would have liked to have seen something at the end where she gave an example of how she progressively got better at something. But when I looked at this, I'm a baker, and I was like, macarons, starting that out as your first one. No, you need to start with something smaller. And I thought it was a really good self-reflection to look back and say, I can't skip over the steps that help me get me to where I need to go. So I kind of looked at it as more self-reflective. I just would have liked to have seen an example of that at the end.
Interesting. It's good to hear feedback that varies across different readers, right? This is why we read in teams, so that people can pull out nuances that may not have been apparent to you when you read through, and those sort of warning flags, and so that you can talk through them. This is going to be a big leap for a student like this to come to Cascadia. Is she ready for it? Can she be successful here? All right. Disciplinary information, no. Do you guys, Kate and Grace, do you still see the disciplinary information on your Common Apps? You do?
We readers don't see it.
Okay. It doesn't show up on ours anymore. I'm sure that on the back end it's visible somewhere, but we've chosen not to have that visible on our application anymore. Okay.
May I ask it's a question actually about part of the application earlier where it showed what the siblings were doing. In the current Common App, you actually can't put in what your siblings are doing anymore.
Oh.
So is that something that matters to you guys?
So my understanding is that when it was visible to see, it was partially to understand because some schools have different definitions of first generation. So some, if your sibling went to a college or university and graduated from a college or university, you're no longer technically first gen because someone in your
interesting
went. So that depends on the institution. It's also a way for schools that track legacy to get the idea and understanding of legacy, because otherwise that's not present in the application unless the student presents it for themselves about their siblings. Parents, that's available if they choose to include that. So I would say it's those two instances that it used to be most important for, but my institution, we don't track legacy in that sense. And I think for a lot of institutions that have been moving away, and then the Common App has been moving away from it, that's maybe part of why that no longer is as something that is available there in that part of the Common App.
I think I could also see how there would be a fear around sharing where older siblings are. If they, like, if you've got three older siblings and none of them went to college, I could see how there would be a fear that, well, this student then isn't going to be able to succeed in college also. And so I think taking away some of that bias is probably smart. Nishant, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess like on the flip side, right? Like when you're looking at it from a yield perspective, if you have a student that goes to that school, is that like while it might be not legacy, but it might help from a yield perspective, like is that something that's factored in?
So we do ask that question on the CC in the CC specific Common App questions, because we see that a lot of students who have siblings who go here also are likely to enroll here and do well and graduate. And so that is not a huge factor, but it is something that we're thinking about as we're reading in our process. Kate and
Which is
Grace,
like
do you
one of our students.
Yeah. Kate and Grace, do you see any of that?
We ask whether there's another sibling that's applying in the same year, so like a twin situation, just so we're aware of that. And it always adds a little additional context. It's not so just having a sibling at any point in their college career at our institution is not a formal question, but if a student mentions it, it always adds a little bit of context. But yeah, I feel like it's not legacy, but it gets for me like uncomfortably close to legacy, and it's unlawful for my university to take into that account. So I try to kind of steer clear of it, but again, everything is context.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right, we'll keep going. So let's move on to the supplement. So the supplement question is specifically about being at a liberal arts college. How do you think that studying at a liberal arts college will benefit you? And what did you guys see in here that stood out to you?
Say again, she seemed like a liberal arts student. She talked about multiple areas of study. She also, what I appreciated compared to a lot of the other students, had some specifics about Cascadia. I didn't see in a lot of the other applications that we looked at. But yeah, she just came across as a liberal arts kind of student to me.
Yeah, she talks about Cascadia's focus on supporting students like me, by which I'm guessing she means first-gen students, students of color, maybe students from marginalized identities, that's important to her, right? That they have that commitment.
Yeah.
It struck me that I apologize, go ahead.
I was just going to say cross disciplines too, writing and mathematics. I liked that.
Yeah, to build on that, I was actually just going to add that it struck me as a bit adventuresome as well, which I think was a little bit. It kicks back to her essay, even in the idea of maybe sometimes tackling more than you can chew and needing to take a step back. When I look at this, like joining groups like a tutoring club or an orchestra, didn't see any evidence that she has history of an instrument or something like that, but she sees it as, hey, I'd like to try it, that seems pretty ambitious to me. So I kind of took that essay a little bit in more along the lines of it was reflective of knowing that, hey, sometimes I bite off more than I can chew, but not necessarily read into it that she would hold herself back, because to me, it strikes me as she's a very adventuresome personality.
Yeah, that's great. She needs that to come out to Cascadia.
And I would say, as we kind of look at the other candidates too and how they answered this prompt, it's important to kind of hone in on what the prompt is asking. And it really does focus on why do you want a liberal arts college, not why is Cascadia a good fit. So I think if, when the other students may or may not address Cascadia specifically, I think that's okay. We sort of have the opposite issue where we have a short answer where we're essentially asking, why did you select your major, and what do you hope to do academically at our university? And sometimes, most students will address that, and then there's a significant chunk that we'll talk about. I really like skiing and rock climbing and football games, and while that's wonderful, it actually is not what we asked in the prompt at all. We really were sticking to academics. So I would caution us against dinging any of the students that stick to like a liberal arts college in theory later on. But yeah, I mean, she certainly is writing this with Cascadia in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point. We used to get a lot of those too. I want to be near the mountains. Like, well, there are a lot of places in America that are near the mountains. It doesn't have to be our place. Okay. And then we've got a recommendation from her English teacher. What stands out to us here? Anybody see anything?
What I underlined on this was on the surface, nothing in common, like that she was bringing together things from making connections across classes, and that she helped lead classes through some very important points. So not afraid to speak up. And when I think about like liberal arts education, you have a lot of classroom discussions. It seemed like she pulling stuff from multiple classes, different kinds of classes, and help lead discussions, which I thought would be great.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think sometimes it gives people pause that this is like only half a page. When you first look at it, you're like, oh, did she not have enough to say, or did she not have anything good to say? And I just want to say out loud that it doesn't matter, right? Like that we're looking for a few things that a teacher can pull out and say about a student, and they don't have to go on for a page to do a great job of giving us some insight into what a student is like in the classroom. All right, go to the next one. So this is a science teacher recommendation. What do we see here?
I have a question about
Yeah.
one piece of this that came up before, I think, which
Okay.
is the reference to 25%. And there's another letter of recommendation from the counselor that talked about her being the top 25% of her class. So here was my question about it. Are we as admissions officers allowed to account for that when the school's policy is not to report class rank? In other words, it sort of was slipped into the file inadvertently just because the evaluators were describing their student, right? And so it was entirely innocent and not meant to be anything other than that. But it is information that the school itself is not inclined to release as part of the student's file. So what do we do with that? Do we disregard it? But are we sort of pregnant with the knowledge and so we really can't? What do we do with that as a practical matter?
Yeah. I would sort of take it with a grain of salt because it's one class. And sometimes I like to get teacher recommendations from classes that were maybe the harder classes for the student, where they had to struggle a little bit in the class. And so then I wouldn't expect them to be the top student in the class. So yeah, for me, it would be really easy to disregard. How about you guys, Kate and Grace?
Yeah, I noticed that too, Chris, and I was kind of surprised, given the school's policy, that it was referenced twice. I think I would also disregard it, and I think a key piece of information that we also don't have on the profile is the size of the class or the school, because top 25% of a very large freshman class could be 100 students, but here it could be, we just know that the school's small, but we don't know how small. So it could be she's in the top 5 kids of her grade. We just don't know. So because of that, and especially since the smaller the school, the less indicative of strength the class rank is. For those many reasons, I would, yeah, again, like Hillary said, take it with a grain of salt. But I sort of wish they hadn't included it at all.
I think it would be different if the teacher said that she typically lands in the bottom 25% of my students, right? Like that I would be like, ooh, gosh, that's not great. But the top 25% is just sort of like, okay. I mean, there are a lot of great students at this school. A lot of these students go to college. I expect it to be a relatively competitive place in terms of grades. The other thing that I noticed in this teacher rec is that they're continuing to say that she's good at connecting information, which is great to know, right? That just sort of adds to the picture that we have of her as a really good liberal arts learner.
And I would just really quick add for all the letters that have been submitted, they all
Mhm.
mention the responsibilities that she has outside of school. And I do think that it's, of course, we trust when a student says, oh, yeah, I have 20 hours a week, 30 hours, 40 hours a week of obligations to my family. But it's different when you also hear it corroborated by the counselor, by the teachers, because we can get a better sense of, okay, this is a significant impact on this student. This is a significant responsibility, and other people recognize it too, which is also a great way to understand a sense of, this student is accountable and tells people like, hey, I have obligations, and is not hiding them, like is open about them. And I think that's also important because we want students that are able to, support themselves, stand up for themselves, vouch for themselves in a classroom, especially in college when independence becomes such a big part of just the experience of being a college student. So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for that, Grace. Okay, so that's the end of Alana's application. We went through that at a very luxurious pace because it was our first application to read together. So we're going to pick up the pace for the next two because we kind of have a lot of our questions answered about how we're reading the application. So for the next two, we'll just sort of pull out the highlights and lowlights of the different pages that we're looking at. Okay.
Friends, this concludes the first part. I hope you'll join us next week for the second part. On Monday's episode, here will join me to answer a question from Laura from Pennsylvania, and she wants to know, my student's a varsity athlete, but they will not play their sport at the varsity level in college. How do admission officers factor in all the hours she's put in to play her sport in high school when they read her admissions file? Then we have a brand new interview. It's a 2-hour interview. It's a deep dive. It's with Daniel Chambliss, a professor of sociology at Hamilton College Emeritus. He was there for over 40 years, and he's the author of the book, How College Works. And you're going to hear part 1 of 4. And we have part 3 of 4 of my interview with Grant Gosselin, Dean of Admissions at Boston College. And we're discussing Boston College. And friends, remember, just because a college is harder to get into, that doesn't make it a better college for your student. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed, and you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify, and if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our international admissions expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Matvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stalionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.